The following podcast contains bizarre theories, strange facts, and some out of this world opinions. Listener discretion is advised, especially if you trust the government.
Conspiracy. Conspiracy.
So, some conspiracies are so strange, so bizarre, that they make you question everything you thought you knew. So, imagine this: one of the most famous bands in the world, adored by millions, changing the face of music forever. But behind the screaming fans and the chart-topping records, a darker story was quietly spreading. Whispers of an accident, hints hidden in album covers, secret messages buried in the music itself. A story so wild that if it's true, it would mean we've been singing along to a stranger for decades. This is a conspiracy that refuses to die, even if one of the Beatles might have. Welcome to Conspiracy. Hello and welcome back to Conspiracy, the podcast where I dive headfirst into the weird, the wild, and the wonderful world of conspiracies. I'm Ash, and I'm your host of Conspiracy. If you're new around here, we drop episodes every Wednesday, so subscribe so you never miss an episode. Quick disclaimer, this is a comedy and entertainment podcast. I joke, I rant, I spiral into tangents, and it's probably not going to be taken for gospel. You get the gist. Now, if you tuned in last week, you'll know I introduced a brand new format for the show. Bigger, juicier, and a bit more unhinged. And for those of you just joining us, here's how it goes. So first, we dive deep into this week's main theory. Today, it's one of the most famous music conspiracies of all time, the Paul McCartney death theory. Then we go conspiracy versus science/reality, where I put the official explanation side by side with the conspiracy take, and we choose a winner. After that, it's headline of the week, the breaking news segment where I take one of the world's biggest headlines and I ask, is it really what it looks like, or is it just the next chapter in the conspiracy playbook? Then we've got the Tinfoil Confessions, where I share one of your stories sent in by you, the listeners, and I've got some pretty wild ones in store for you. And let me tell you, today's one is brilliant. And if you've got a mad story or theory, you can send it to conspiracy@gmail.com and you might just hear it in this section. And finally, I spin the Wacky Wheel of Weird, landing on a random mini theory to close the show with some chaos. So if you're new, that's the buffet, and if you're returning, welcome back to the madness. Grab your headphones, grab your tinfoil, and maybe grab a drink, because this one is gonna get weird. Let's dive in. So the main theory of the week this week is Paul McCartney is dead. Yep. So where did that rumour begin? So we have to rewind to the late 1960s to start exploring. So the Beatles are at the absolute height of their fame. They're not just a band anymore, they're a global phenomenon. Beatlemania has gone from screaming teenagers at airports to an entire cultural movement. But then, 1969, out of nowhere, a bizarre rumour starts spreading across American college campuses, students claiming that Paul McCartney actually died 3 years earlier in 1966 in a horrific car crash. So the story goes, to prevent mass hysteria, and let's be honest, probably to keep the money machine rolling, the Beatles, with a little encouragement from the British establishment, quietly replaced Paul with a lookalike. Now this all really exploded thanks to a Michigan University student newspaper. They ran a piece laying out the so-called evidence that Paul was dead, and from there it went viral. Well, as viral as things could go in the 60s, no TikTok, no Twitter, just people whispering in pubs and stoners arguing over vinyl sleeves at 3 a.m. But nevertheless, it went viral. And by the time a DJ in Detroit did a whole radio show dedicated to the rumour, dissecting songs, lyrics, album covers, it was everywhere. Headlines in the press, fans calling in to say they'd spotted clues, and the Beatles themselves being asked in interviews if one of them had been swapped out like a dodgy light bulb. And the theory wasn't just the fact that Paul had died, it was that the band had been cheekily dropping hints about it in their music and artwork ever since. So, from this moment, the legend of Paul is dead was born. Also, can you imagine being in the world's biggest band at the time, and people are looking at you every which way like, is it really him? Is it really Paul McCartney? Everyone thinks you're dead. And he's just like, I'm just making music as I always have been. And then people are like, yeah, but his eyebrow is different. Or, his mustache has changed. And he's just like, just had a haircut, guys. Like, at that point, what does he do? Is he like, start suing people for defamation? Or, you know, I guess they just had to lean into it and laugh about it, which, is exactly what they did, to be fair. But according to the theory, when Paul supposedly died in that car crash in 1966, the Beatles didn't just sit there thinking, well, that's it then. Case closed, band over. Let's all go back to Liverpool, where we're from. No, not at all. Instead, they allegedly found themselves a replacement. And not just any replacement, it was a Scottish bloke called William Campbell, who just so happened to look a bit like Paul McCartney. Granted, with the help of some surgery, dodgy moustache, and probably a wig from Woolworths, but this random geezer apparently became the new face of Beatle mania. The name given to him by the theorists is Billy Shears, right? So Billy Shears. Shears spelled S-H-E-A-R-S. Now, Billy Shears is actually a character referenced in the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band album right at the very start. And I can only imagine the job advert, right? Wanted. Left-handed bassist, must sing harmonies, must smile in photos, must be willing to fool the entire world into thinking you're someone else, and you'll have to pretend to be married to Linda McCartney. Pays well though, includes free weed and awkward interviews with John Lennon. Some versions of the theory even claim this was all decided in a Paul McCartney lookalike contest. Now, you may have heard of this already. You can definitely find a lot of information about this contest online if you want to go into a much deeper dive. But apparently this is what happened, right? The Beatles secretly held a lookalike contest, which, if that is true, I can only imagine the setup must have been the most cursed version of Britain's Got Talent ever. Can you imagine Simon Cowell in a polo neck, judging blokes doing Liverpool accents? It's a no from me.
Why? I look like him. I look like Paul McCartney. Why can't I be in the band? I want to be in Beatles.
You're not great. You're awful. Next. So, the idea is that William Campbell, or so-called Billy Shears, was trained, surgically enhanced, and then unleashed onto the world as Paul McCartney 2.0. The fans wouldn't notice, the music world would go on, and the Beatlemania could keep printing money. And let's be honest, if anyone could pull off a stunt that ridiculous, it would be the Beatles in the late 60s. They were bigger than Jesus, for Christ's sake. And a fake Paul? Just another Tuesday for those guys. It is crazy how massive the Beatles became. Like, whether you like their music or you don't really fuck with it, it's neither here nor there, right? They were. So you can imagine theories were coming out the woodwork with these guys. But this one in particular definitely took off and held its own, and still to this day people do believe Paul McCartney was replaced. And a lot of people, right, they dissect the music. This is a massive thing in this theory, is the actual music. And the fact that people believe that the Beatles started leaving clues in the music just so they could kind of vent it out, not have it kind of linger over them. They're being honest by putting it in music. So, it's like a bit of a weight taken off them. They're not really keeping this massive secret. They are releasing it just through cryptic messages. Kind of like how people say Stanley Kubrick leaves clues in his films about him filming the moon landing, right? But let's say the theory is correct, right? And the idea is that the lads felt guilty about it, right? Which you kind of would. You are tricking the world. Or maybe they were just bored, I don't know. But what they did as a kind of escape was that they started to hide these secret messages in songs, lyrics, and their recordings. So let's take a look at some of them so you can decide how you feel about it. But let's start with the most famous one, backmasking. Fans discovered that if you played certain Beatles tracks backwards, you could hear hidden messages. This is super interesting because I did try it and it does work. But again, I think that also happens in a lot of music where if you play it backwards, there is some kind of, you can create another narrative out of it, right? But in one of their songs, Revolution 9, when you spin it backwards, people swear that they can hear the phrase, "Turn me on, dead man," which could be a little nod to the fact that Paul McCartney is dead. Turn me on, dead man. Could be. And if you do want to go and check that out, Revolution 9, you can kind of hear it, right? On the track I'm So Tired, if you play the mumbling at the end in reverse, some people say it says that Paul is dead, miss him, miss him. And again, if you go and play it, go check it out for yourself, you can kind of hear it. I'm not gonna lie. However, is it in reality just nonsense syllables and the power of suggestion? Like, if I didn't tell you those things and you just reversed it naturally, I don't know what situation you'd be in to reverse a Beatles song, but yeah, I don't know where that would come from. But if, let's just say, on a random Tuesday, you decided to reverse Beatles, would you hear it without someone telling you what to listen for? I'm not so sure about that part, right? But, you know, it's interesting nonetheless that if you do listen to it backwards, you can kind of hear it, right? Maybe that is the sign. And in Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, the album literally opens by introducing that person called Billy Shears. So, is that a coincidence, or is that them introducing this new Paul McCartney to the world stage, kind of feeling guilty about it, so they just said, hey, introducing Billy Shears, and now we'll go back to the music? It could be. It could absolutely be. It is a random name just to throw in there, right? Who the fuck is Billy Shears? Like, why is the name even there to begin with, if not being used to tell you something? And also, Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Heart Club Band is one of their biggest thing, right? Everyone and God's dog knows that album, and you definitely know the album artwork. Great artwork. I actually did a piece on this. So once upon a time, I actually did a piece on this. Just came back to me right now. Back in college, I think I used it as a stimulus for, I did like drama, theatre, performance in college, and the one before university for my American listeners. Not your college, UK college, kind of like senior year of high school for you guys. Yeah, I used it as a stimulus for a performance, and fuck, that's all I remember. It was so long ago. Oh, the good old days. Anyway, can you imagine sitting there in 1967, high off your nut, because, you know, everyone was on the marijuana at the time. Just, yeah, absolutely high. Choosing just to, like, stick on the vinyl backwards because you couldn't quite figure out how it worked, so it just started playing backwards, and then you just hear, turn me on, dead man. or Paul is dead, miss him, miss him. You're like, what Beatles song is this? This is not Yellow Submarine. Yeah, being high as fuck, you'd probably be like, yeah, but I think I need a new record player. That one needs to go. Also, you probably call bloody what they call Eden what they call from The Conjuring, the ghost finders, Eden something. You probably call them like, damn, my record player's playing all of these songs backwards and it's giving me messages. It's not the marijuana, I promise. But yeah, I think it would be very far and few between about people playing songs backwards. Sounds a very culty thing to do. Maybe, I don't know, maybe they did it in Jonestown and this is where it's actually come from. Don't drink the Kool-Aid, guys. But there's more. There's more, right? In the song Strawberry Fields Forever, at the very end, John Lennon can be heard muttering something, and it does sound a lot like, I buried Paul. John later claimed it was actually cranberry sauce, which it's either the world's worst cover-up or the strangest bit of product placement in music history. Also, cranberry sauce, I buried Paul. Okay, well, it has the same amount of syllables, I guess. And either way, if John Lennon is whispering about cranberry sauce at the end of a song, I have more questions, because why? However, I mean, they're amazing, one of the biggest bands ever to exist. So hey, maybe singing about cranberry sauce is the way forward, guys. But actually no, I take that back, because why are you saying cranberry sauce if you're not saying I Bury Paul? What was he making a sandwich? Was he auditioning for the Ocean Spray advert? I don't know. I guess we'll never know, but maybe he was saying I Bury Paul, and that was the confession. Maybe Paul McCartney is dead, you guys, and it is a replacement. But if the songs weren't enough, right? Another obsession came from the album covers. And to be fair, this is where the Paul is dead theory went from a quirky rumour to a full-blown cultural movement, okay? So let's start with the big one, the one we all know, Abbey Road. Probably the most famous album cover of all time, next to the Nirvana one with the baby, but it's the one where the Beatles are walking across the zebra crossing. Everyone on this planet and probably on Mars knows that artwork, right? But fans analysed the image and they came to the conclusion that it wasn't just a stroll across the street, it was actually a funeral procession. John in white is the priest, Ringo in black was the undertaker. No, not the wrestler, but the job. Tombstone pile driver from Ringo. Okay, so Ringo in black is the undertaker. George in denim is the gravedigger, yet to be introduced on the WWE. No, okay, so let's reel it in. John in white, Ringo in black, George in denim, and Paul barefoot, out of step with the others, eyes closed, equals the corpse. I mean, plus he is holding a cigarette in his right hand when Paul was famously left-handed. Could be a slight missed detail or the smoking gun, literally. So that is something to think about, for sure. But I mean, barefoot, out of step, ciggy in the wrong hand. If that's evidence, then half the blokes outside of Weatherspoons at 1 a.m. are technically corpses too, for sure. And the next artwork to dissect is that Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band that I was talking about before. The cover is a carnival of weirdness. It's a mashup of all these famous faces, flowers, instruments. Apparently they actually made the album in India, and that's why there is so many like different colours and different mashups of different famous people and all of the various instruments. Well, that's my knowledge coming back now from college. See, never leaves you guys, never leaves you. But sharp-eyed fans notice that the floral display at the bottom seems to spell out Paul. And the bass guitar laid out in the flowers, it only has 3 strings, representing the 3 surviving Beatles. How about that? And if you do look at the artwork, it does kind of look like Paul, like it's spelled out Paul. Interesting. Could also be the fact that they learnt those instruments in India and they were playing on like 3-string banjos or something. I think I remember something like that. Or is that just what we're told? There's also the artwork of Magical Mystery Tour. So inside the album booklet, there's a photo where a mysterious hand is held over Paul's head. And in some cultures, that's actually meant to be a death symbol. So maybe that's what they picked up from India. I'm not sure if that is a death symbol in India. If I have anyone listening from India, please let me know. Because in England, it usually just means someone's about to give you a dead arm, to be honest. But to the hardcore fans, this was all undeniable evidence. And finally, yesterday and today, the infamous Butcher cover, originally banned because it showed the Beatles dressed in butcher smocks with baby dolls and meat scattered around them, which is pretty questionable anyway. But you know, to most people, it was just a tasteless joke, I guess. But to the Paul is dead crowd, it was symbolic of Paul's death and dismemberment in that alleged car crash. But I do have to say, if you're looking for kind of hidden funeral symbolism in a band that once released a song about an octopus's garden, I think you might be working a bit too hard, because some of their songs are fucking ridiculous. But maybe that's the ploy. Maybe it's like, okay, well, we can't always release like seriously great songs. We've got to kind of throw in some wacky ones in there just to kind of take the limelight off the fact that Paul McCartney's left eye isn't kind of the same left eye as we had before, but maybe we've all been warped by the Beatles. Maybe the Beatles are in cahoots with Black Rock and the Lizard People. But let's dive in a little bit further just about the actual replacement guy and how it could happen and some of the things that the new, in quotation marks, Paul McCartney started doing. So if you weren't convinced by the lyrics or the album covers, the Paul is Dead believers point to the following changes. Before 1996, Monsieur McCartney was clean-shaven, boyish, and spoke with a strong Liverpool accent. And then after 1966, suddenly he's rocking a moustache and a beard, speaking with a slightly different tone, and he was even cracking jokes, believe it or not, with a new kind of confidence. So a lot of people point to this and say this isn't just kind of a natural progression in someone's character. This was a body double slipping into the role. And you have to say, we do kind of see body doubles a lot now, right? Like, if you think about Joe Biden and the amount of times his earlobes have changed, or the fact that sometimes he looks 91 and then the next day he's like 75, you do get that quite often. And definitely back in the day, the people like the CIA and the FBI, they were using kind of prosthetics and different body doubles and agents that could kind of infiltrate things. So maybe the biggest band in the world at the time did just get some of that treatment. Like, it could be. And also, people swore Paul seemed way taller after 1966. He just suddenly started standing higher than the rest in photos, even towering over John Lennon at times. And John Lennon's a big motherfucker. So what's that all about? Is that kind of, did he just get some better posture? Did he get a chiropractor, get a PT in the gym, and now all of a sudden he's just growing? Or was it a different man altogether? And it doesn't stop there, because people also claim that his songwriting style supposedly changed. Early McCartney tracks, they were upbeat love songs. I wanna hold your hand and Can't Buy Me Love. But after 1966, he was writing stranger, darker stuff for sure, like Helter Skelter, Obla Di Obla Da, Blackbird. There was definitely a change. Could have just came with the fact that he's now very famous and has a bit more experiences and is probably in the industry, and the industry's pretty dark, so he was writing about how dark it was. Or could it just be a different guy? And if you are a Beatles fan yourself, what do you think about that? Like, do you think it was just kind of artistic growth? Or are you slightly convinced that maybe there was a different bloke behind the piano? Because I'm swaying. I don't know. We are going to break it down in conspiracy versus science reality and choose a winner in just a moment. But before we do that, we do have to point out that when the Beatles were asked about the rumours in interviews, instead of denying it outright, they'd often actually joke about it. John in particular seemed to love winding people up about this in particular. In one interview, when asked about Paul being dead, John said, if we were going to cover it up, we'd have done it better than that, which honestly is either brilliant sarcasm or the kind of thing you say when you've been caught and you don't know how to wriggle out of that situation. Got your little back against the wall, like, well, if we had have done it, we would have done it better. Am I right? Am I right? Just got Ringo in the background going, next. Next question. But can you actually imagine being Paul McCartney and this rumour isn't true? It's just you, right? You've just grown, you grew a beard, and you're just getting older. And you're literally alive. Sat there, and there's a microphone in your face and the world screaming, you're dead! You're dead! Like, what do you do? At that point, it's like, do I cry? Do I laugh? Like, do I just go along with it? Do I start charging royalties for my own tribute band? Like, what's going on here? What am I supposed to do? Like, do I need to shave my beard off? Do I need to shrink? Like, what do you want from me? Just let me sing my songs. Just let me sing my Yellow Submarine and let it be, okay? But let's take a look now at conspiracy versus science reality matchup. All right, so it's time for conspiracy versus science/reality, the ultimate showdown. In the blue corner, In the blue corner, we have reality, the official story. Paul McCartney never died, never got replaced. He's just one man who's been making music since the 60s. Same bloke, same bass, same bangers. And in the red corner, conspiracy with Paul died in 1966 and a Scottish bloke named Billy Shears has been filling in ever since. Let's break it down. Ding ding! Round 1. Forensic, the face and the voice. So, science reality says facial recognition studies line up the key markers, right? The cheekbone structure, the philtrum length, the ear geometry, the concha and the helix, the dental alignment. Voice prints from pre and post 66 show consistent formant patterns and vibrato rate. Okay? Conspiracy counters with the following: earlobe anomalies, a longer face post 66, and the idea that surgery plus camera angles could close the gap, and the timbre shifts equals a new vocalist. And judges score on the first round. To be fair, forensic tools are very hard to argue with. So first round goes to science. Round 2, timeline and paper trail. So science reality says there's public appearances, studio logs, touring schedules, interviews, tax contract records, and a relentless press machine making a full swap tricky. Too many witnesses and too many moving parts. Conspiracy says that's exactly how a cover-up works, right? Drown the truth in appearances, MI5 management pressure plus money motive equals airtight wall of normalcy. The judges score this round. Plausibility favours the mundane. Science edges it. 2 rounds to science. Round 3, musical clues, so the backmasking and the lyrics. Science reality says Pareidolia 101. You tell people what to hear and they will hear it. And Lennon's Cranberry Sauce beats I Bury Paul on the boring but likely scale. Conspiracy says turn me on dead man. Paul is dead, miss him. Plus the Billy Shears intro, that's catnip. Artists love Easter eggs, so why not morbid ones? The judges score this one. Art is vibes. Conspiracy story is juicier, so the round goes to conspiracy. Round 4, album art. Abbey Road, Pepper, MMT. Science and reality says designers design, right? Bare feet, out of step, floral shapes, aesthetic choices. The funeral procession reads like post hoc myth making. Conspiracy says the priest, undertaker, grave diggers, corpse lineup, right hand sig on a lefty, the bass with 3 strings in flowers, the head over hand death symbol. Too many coincidences. The judges score this one. Symbol hunters win on theatre. Round to conspiracy. We're all square. Round 5. Behaviour, height and style. Science reality says people age, accents drift, fashion changes. Post 66 Paul grows a beard, experiments musically, gets arty. That's the 60s. Conspiracy says the new Paul writes differently. You got Blackbird Helter Skelter. He stands taller, speaks posher. Classic signs of a swapped in professional. So the judges score it. Compelling pattern spotting, even if explainable. Conspiracy nicks it. Conspiracy leading 3 rounds to 2. Round 6. Logistics and motive. Science reality says replacing a Beatle for 6 decades, fooling family, friends, producers, doctors, and the entire industry. That's not a cover-up. That's a multi-generational HR project. Conspiracy says motive equals money plus stability plus preventing mass hysteria. The bigger the star, the bigger the incentive. Judges score it. Feasibility KO's romance. Round to science. Tied again. Round 7. The culture test. Public perception versus myth power. Science reality says public scrutiny is brutal. If it were fake, decades of high-res cameras, live shows, and nosy biographers would have cracked it. Conspiracy says the myth won't die because it's fun. It connects dots, invites you to play detective, and makes every Beatle artifact feel like a treasure map. The judges score in the court of vibe and longevity. Conspiracy wins. So Conspiracy is leading 4 rounds to 3. The final round is all on this one, guys. The could you live it question, right? Science Reality says, could a double convincingly write, perform, collaborate from Wings to Kanye, and age in public for 50 plus years without slipping? Rational answer is definitely no. But conspiracy says maybe the new Paul outpulled the old Paul, which became the greatest performance of all time. Judges score this that reality lands the sensible punch. Scores level out to a tie. So, who wins? The judges score it even, however, one must win, and the judges are leaning on the story over the stats. So this week's winner, by decision, conspiracy. Why? Because while reality brings the receipts, conspiracy brings the reason you're still listening. The myth is too delicious, the clues too sticky, and the cultural afterlife too strong. Science may be right, but conspiracy wins this week on points for narrative, theatre, and pure audacity. Don't worry, science, you'll get them next week.
Ladies and gentlemen, I've just been handed an urgent and horrifying news story.
Wait, what's that? We're getting some breaking news coming through? Okay, let's cross over to the studio for Headline of the Week. Tonight's top story, Operation Raise the Colours. Across the UK, towns and cities are being plastered with Union Jacks and St George's crosses. The campaign claims it's about patriotism, but theorists say it's actually a covert signalling system for something much bigger. Some councils are pulling them down, others are leaving them up, and nobody seems quite sure if this is national pride or national paranoia. We go live now to our field correspondent Keith in Doncaster, who's been monitoring flag activity on the estate. Yep, thank you. I can confirm at least 14 flags have gone up on my street alone. Neighbours say it's about football and pride. Personally, I think it's a summoning ritual. At 1.3 flags flapped at once, which in conspiracy maths equals 6. The number of the beast, you know. Also, someone's cat's gone missing. Coincidence? I think not. Back to you in the studio. Thanks, Keith. Strong words there. Now, scientists insist Operation Raise the Colours is just a grassroots campaign, but conspiracy chatter suggests it could actually be a secret code for Britain's underground lizard population, signalling it's time to rise. A mass psychological experiment to see how many flags a human brain can tolerate before going mad, or perhaps an elaborate distraction. So while you're staring at bunting, they're sneaking another pint tax past Parliament. We now cross over to the cultural affairs correspondent Dave in Essex, who's been analysing pub reaction. Yeah, thanks. Well, I've spoken to the locals here who believe the flag's definitely a government plot. One bloke swore the St George's Cross is basically a QR code for UFOs. Another insisted that the bunting above the bar spelled out send help in semaphore, whatever that means. Well, morale is shaky, but the jukebox still works, so back to you. Thanks, Dave, and we appreciate the important insights from the front lines. And finally, an exclusive. MI5 have allegedly been spotted monitoring flag density from space. Sources say if too many Union Jacks go up at once, it triggers a secret failsafe where the Angel of the North flaps its wings and takes off. Terrifying stuff. So, is Operation Raise the Colours just patriotism, or the grand opening ceremony for the lizard people's coronation? Time will tell, but that was your headline of the week.
13 for confessions.
Alright, so it's time for our next section, the tinfoil confessions. So this is where you lot send me your weirdest stories, and I sit here wondering how on earth I've ended up as Britain's complaint inbox for aliens, lizards, and haunted Mondeos. I think I kind of know though. I host a podcast called Conspiracy. Well, this week's confession comes from James. And James, strong name. More solid than Karen last week, that's for sure. Not suspicious. Well, unless you're writing from MI5 HQ and you like it shaken, not stirred, in which case, blink twice and I'll know. Anyway, so James writes in. Hi Ash, love the pod. Thank you. So this happened about 10 years ago when I was driving back from a late shift. It's one of those country roads you only ever see on episodes of Midsummer Murders, pitch black, hedges taller than your car, and so quiet you can hear your own thoughts. And trust me, mine weren't great at midnight on a Tuesday. Okay, well, yeah, I know the country road you're talking about for sure. Got quite a few of them around me. They're terrifying to drive down at night time. So kudos to you, James. I'm cruising along, listening to TalkSport very loudly, when suddenly some headlights appeared out of nowhere. Except they weren't headlights. A whole car just appeared about 20 feet in front of me. No build up, no engine roar, no overtaking maneuver, just there. Like someone had clicked copy and paste in real life. Okay, so first of all, that's terrifying, especially on a country lane. Like, what the fuck? So, where did the car come from? Is Elon Musk testing out a new Control V function on a Tesla? Like, what's going on? Well, let's find out, because James goes on. He says, so naturally, I did what any sane man would do, screamed, slammed the brake. Okay, so naturally, I did what any sane man would do, screamed, slammed the brakes, and immediately considered changing my underwear. The car was silver, looked like a Mondeo, maybe a Vauxhall, but here's the thing. It made no sound. I didn't hear tyres, I didn't hear an engine, nothing. Just there 1 second, gone the next. Well, a few points there, James. Either this is a ghost story and you are experiencing a ghost car. Two, you're either very intoxicated or high off your face. Or maybe this is just classic ghost logic. Of all the cars that could potentially haunt you, a Lamborghini, a Ferrari, no, it's going to be a Mondeo or a Vauxhall. Like, what? Like, why does this car not have any charm? Like, why is this not a sports car? Because I feel like if you were intoxicated or high as fuck, you would be seeing, like, a Lamborghini or something. Like, I don't feel like you'd be seeing a Mondeo. So maybe it's ghosts, man. Maybe James, maybe you saw a ghost car. Well, anyway, he continues. Now, the next morning, I checked my dash cam, convinced I'd caught it on tape. Yeah, surely. I mean, if you had a dash cam, that would have caught it all, right? Mate, nothing. What? Not even the bit where I braked. The recording jumps from me listening to TalkSport to dead silence, like the camera itself got stage fright. My mate says it was a ghost car. My uncle reckons it was aliens. Me, I think it was the government testing cloaking tech. You know, like James Bond's invisible Aston Martin, except on a Ford Mondeo budget. Yeah. Well, yeah. Ghost car, aliens, or government tech. It's got to be one of the three. Just pluck it out of a hat, and we'll go with that one. It's got to be one of the three, because how on earth does a car just appear in front of you and then disappears? Also, did you drive through the car? Don't think you mentioned this in the email, but did you drive through the car? Like, did you have to swerve out the way? Did you stop? Like, I have more questions, James. Please respond to my questions. But it sounds weird. And you know this is a British story because Americans, they get Area 51, flying saucers, secret space weapons, all the rest of it. And we get invisible Ford Mondeo. Like, trial run on an A road near Milton Keynes. It's weird though, James. Thank you for sending it in. And he signs off with, all I know is this. If I ended up disappearing one day, check the CCTV footage. If there's just a gap where I should be, don't call the police. Call you, Ash. Because if anyone's going to blow the lid on Ghost Mondeos, it's Conspiracy. Oh, man. Thank you so much for sending that in. And there it is. My legacy. Forget Roswell, guys. Or forget MK Ultra. I'll go down in history as the man who exposed Britain's haunted hatchbacks. Oh, but that was brilliant, James. Thank you so much for sending that in. And also, that's kind of scary, man. Like, what? I need more answers from this story. Also, has anyone else ever experienced the ghost car? The ghost Mondeo or the ghost Vauxhall? Better yet, has anyone experienced the ghost Ferrari? That's the story I'm interested in hearing next, for sure. But no, if you've got a story like James's, whether it's UFOs over the car park or your neighbour's cat vanishing into thin air, whatever it might be, send it in. You can DM me on Insta or TikTok at Conspiracy, or drop me a long form email at conspiracy@gmail.com with your juicy story. Because next week, it could be your madness making it onto Tinfoil Confessions.
The Wacky Wheel of Weird.
And now it's time for our final section, my favourite bit of chaos, the Wacky Wheel of Weird. So here's how it works. I've got a big old wheel, every slice of it covered in the strangest, silliest, most ridiculous conspiracies known to mankind. These are the ones that aren't quite big enough for a full conspiracy episode, let's say, but I feel like they do deserve 5 minutes of pure chaos. So some of these will make you laugh, some will make you scratch your head, and most of them will make you question whether humanity's collective brain has literally melted. So, without further ado, let's spin the wheel and see what madness the universe wants us to explore today. And today's wheel lands on pigeons are government drones. Okay, let me pull it up. 1 second. Yeah. So, according to the Birds Aren't Real trademark movement, every pigeon you've ever seen isn't actually a bird at all. It's a surveillance drone built by the government to spy on you. Well, if you think about it, they are everywhere, right? They're fearless and they always seem to be watching you, don't they? Those pesky pigeons, they're always about, aren't they? And if they're not watching you, what are they doing? Are they recharging? Because apparently when pigeons sit on power lines, they're not resting, they're actually plugging themselves in like feathery iPhones. Which actually would explain a lot, because when you see pigeons, they don't flinch at anything, man. Like, even when a bus comes hurtling past, they don't move. Like, maybe it's not bravery or stupidness. Maybe they're just on like some Windows XP lag or something. They haven't got the latest update yet. They're just a minute behind. Could be. And of course, the theory goes even further, because people claim the government did a mass bird swap out in the 1970s. The real pigeons were wiped out and the fake drone pigeons were released. Which, if it is true, don't really care about the surveillance part of it, but the question I care about is, who drew the short straw? Like, who had to physically go and collect 10 million dead pigeons? That's some serious community service there. Like, I think I'd prefer to go and do some time. And then, obviously, we have to talk about the classic when it comes to pigeons. Have you ever seen a baby pigeon? And to be fair, you haven't, have you? Because I haven't. I've never seen a baby pigeon ever in my life. Have you? If there's so many pigeons about, they're clearly getting it on quite a lot where the baby's at. That genuinely does baffle me, I'm not going to lie. Like, more often than it probably should, I do think about, where are the baby pigeons? And if the theory is true, the answer to that would be, it's because babies are actually just normal sized pigeons that are being built in secret factories before they're released. But I guess it's kind of like a dodgy car rental scheme, but with feathers. I don't know. Well, all I'll say is, next time you're eating your meal deal in a city centre and a pigeon is staring you down, don't think what you always think. Ugh, rat with wings. I know you think that, because I think that. But what you should be thinking is, there's another government camera collecting data on whether I choose prawn mayo or tuna mayo again. So there you have it. Pigeons, harmless birds, or feathered feds with built-in CCTV. Let me know in the comments what you decide. And that's this week's spin of the Wacky Wheel of Weird. And that, guys, brings us to the end of this week's conspiracy. So, what have we learned? Well, according to some, Paul McCartney died in 1966 and was replaced by a Scottish double called Billy Shears. The clues are in the songs, the album covers, and even the way he holds his ciggy. According to science, he's fine, this is the same face, same voice, same bloke. But, as we saw in Conspiracy versus Science Reality, this week the conspiracy took the win. Which means, for the sake of argument, we've all been singing along to a very convincing tribute act for the last 50 odd years. So, maybe Paul McCartney's alive, maybe he's dead, maybe he's just tired of people analysing his bare feet on Abbey Road. But either way, someone's lying to us. If you enjoyed this episode of Conspiracy, do us a massive favour, hit follow wherever you listen, drop a cheeky 5-star review, it helps more than you know. and share this episode with your mate, who definitely plays vinyl backwards at 3 AM after a few pints. And if you want to get involved, you can find me on TikTok, Insta, and everywhere else at Conspiracy. And also feel free to reach out to me in the comments on Spotify and YouTube as well. I do check those often, so definitely drop a comment down there. Or you can reach me via email, conspiracy@gmail.com. Don't forget to send in your crazy, weird stories for Tinfoil Confessions. Until next time, keep your tinfoil hats polished, keep questioning everything, and remember, the truth is out there.
Conspiracy. Conspiracy.